I'd like to call to order the August 7th, 2025 Columbia Borough Council Workshop. Could I have a roll call, please?
Councilperson Burgard.
Here.
Councilperson Murphy.
Here.
Councilperson Easy.
Here.
Councilperson Fisher. Here. Councilperson Stahl.
Here.
Councilperson Kaufman.
Here.
Council President Zink.
Here.
Mayor Lutz.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Did anyone wish to offer an invocation? If you'd like, please rise for a moment of silence. And Mayor, would you like to lead us in a pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcement of executive sessions. There was an executive session at the conclusion of the July 29th for a council meeting to discuss personnel matters related to replacing staff. Are there any additions, deletions, or reorganization of the agenda? No. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda as published?
So moved. Second.
A motion by Councilperson Kaufman, second by Councilperson Stahl, to approve the agenda as published. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Citizen comment, non-agenda items only. First one up we have is Sharon Littner.
Good evening. It's been a couple months now, a little over 2 months since the finance manager position was vacated, and I wondered who has been doing that role? I mean, who's been filling in?
Do you want me to guess?
Yeah, go ahead.
We still have an independent contract with Borough,
Oh,
who is still available in the office. And also Laurie has been doing a lot of extra financial work, just holding down the fort. So she's been really, really stepping up, doing a good job.
so would that, since Lori's been helping like this, would that be similar to when we had interim managers who took on extra duties and were given compensation for that, like a bonus or something? I didn't know if that would be something that would happen there.
That hasn't been,
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And also, I wanted to comment a little bit about the ordinance regarding the short-term rentals, since the zoning board just approved one that is attached, and the ordinance says detached. And I just really feel strongly that the word detached was put in there for a reason. And I just believe that it's going to push homeownership out. I know one man already moved out because a short-term rental was operating beside him, and it was not attached to him, but he didn't like it, so he left. And I believe what he said, it has the ability, I think, to lower our property value. And I'm wondering if people who live connected now to one could actually use that during an appeal, an assessment appeal, to claim, that their property value is not as high or shouldn't go higher because they're now connected to a short-term rental. So I just wanted to put that out there and ask if you're thinking of changing the ordinance, since it looks like it's going to be allowed to be attached.
If we haven't, we started to talk about that, but we have other legislative items that are more pressing than that one right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Rick, you're signed up for the agenda. Did you want to talk for non-agenda as well?
no.
Okay. And the next sign up is Frank Altrick.
Good evening, you all. Have to comment on the night out. I thought it was well received. Seen a lot of people. Matter of fact, seen a lot of friends. Uh, I always look forward to the hot dogs when I go out there, but they had no onion, and I got on the chief about that a little bit. And a hot dog is not a hot dog without onion, but I just ate them even without the bun. I just put some mustard on them and ate them. I was there from about 10 after 6 to 10 after 8, and I kept looking and looking to get in the ice cream line. And there was other people sitting on the bleachers doing the same thing. That line was still there at 10 after 8. I don't know what time they got scoops. I don't know what time they got out of there, but it had to be late. I guess one of my questions, where are we at with the borough manager replacing him and the finance manager?
We're doing our search that people are being interviewed. You know. You'll know more when we know more.
The finance manager, you had said the last time that the staff is doing that. Why do we need you if the staff is doing it? Isn't that the council's position? To hire and fire and
We approve that, but the borough manager picks their managers, their staff.
I know, but the staff is the one that's interviewing and is going to pick the finance manager, is going to suggest, but isn't that your job, council's job?
No, we do the borough manager.
And you don't do the finance manager?
No, I mean, we can talk to them, but no, that's not our role.
Frank, the only reason why we did it the last time was because both the borough manager and the finance manager had submitted their resignations. So typically the borough manager would be doing the interviewing and hiring the finance manager.
Well,
But Mark had left and then the finance manager left. So then council stepped in. But typically it is the borough's manager responsibility to interview and hire staff.
well, I always thought council did that. The magnitude of the job, the cost of the job and everything, I would have thought that they would have been on top of that. And I would have,
Well, we do determine salary and it is brought before us and we get to determine the final decision as to whether or not.
but you don't interview none of them.
Not unless requested.
Wow. As far as the borough manager, how many have you interviewed so far?
One for sure.
One
One candidate, yes.
in all this time? Wow, it looks like we ain't gonna have a borough manager, we ain't gonna have a finance manager. I would say at this point, the finance manager would probably be the most important, with what's coming up. I mean,
It is.
that
You
ain't,
know what, Frank? Municipal management candidates are not out there. They are not out there.
And Frank, we are all aware of the importance of filling those
We are.
positions and we are working very hard. It's not, no one is being lax in their duties as far as making sure those positions are filled and filled as soon as possible. With the candidates, it's going to be just perfect for our borough.
There have been discussions with prospective
Yeah.
employees,
It's just not formal.
but
Not
not
disclosing.
formal, and several of those didn't pan out. So in other words, the borough manager and some of the county, they are seeing people and I'll say, looking at their qualifications, and some of the people that have applied don't meet the criteria that council has set up
Yeah.
for a borough manager or a finance manager. So it's not like no one has come and applied. People have applied, but not people that are qualified to do the job.
The one that you interviewed, what was the price factor?
We didn't get there yet.
Oh, you're going to re-interview. If you only have one, what is it that we're not getting applicants?
It's not just us, Frank.
It's not just us,
Everywhere.
it's everywhere.
Yeah.
How long did it take for Ephrata, you said?
Ephrata, it took 6 months, and then when they were poised to approve it at a council meeting, the applicant withdrew.
Wow.
And then they waited 3 more months, and then they finally their finance manager was promoted to borough manager.
I can understand people running for council, people running for school board. I can understand that, but these professional jobs with the money that's being paid, I don't understand that. I thought maybe you could give me some input on that.
Well, believe it or not, Frank, we're on the very low end.
Yeah,
Very low end.
I understand that, and I understand you, if you want to get quality, you want to get people that have education, you got to pay for it. And I don't quite think we're doing that, but we don't have it to pay.
Right.
That's our problem. Okay, I was here 2 meetings ago when you talked about the 42-inch pipeline. There's a lot of questions I would have liked to ask, but I didn't, and so there's just a couple I'd like to ask. If that line was to go through, where would that start at?
The river.
We start the river.
Oh, you mean where would they start, like,
Where would the start of the line, it's coming from Lancaster, isn't it?
no.
No, it's coming from the river.
It's going to Lancaster, it's going from the river to actually Oyster Point.
Oh, I got my bearing on that wrong
Yeah,
then.
it's going up Manor Street and cutting over, going through Mountville Borough, through West Hempfield and into East Hempfield Township.
Okay, and this is, I think you said it, this is not drinking water.
No,
What's the main purpose of it?
it's a redundant line, to take water to their treatment and pumping station. So that if the first line goes down,
It's raw water that'll go to the plant to be made suitable for drinking.
We have that pumping station down there where the cabins are. Will that be used to do the pumping?
That's where it'll generate.
Okay, council had a very, very big debate on that, and I was really glad to hear. There were just a couple questions that I would have had, but I thought that was very, very good. But what gets me, the following meeting, the mayor says you need to put that back on the table. Well, now, he wasn't here, he didn't hear none of the debate. So where does he come off wanting to put that back on the table when we have a borough manager that's here for the day-to-day operations and is supposed to be running the borough? He was strongly against it. And I think council voted it down. I'm not sure what the vote was, but what gives him the authority to say, put it back on the table?
Frank, there was no vote up or down.
There's a vote not to send a letter.
The letter, yes, but there's no vote up or down as far as the project goes. And that's why I was told that it was going to replace the original line. Okay?
Who told you that?
That's what I understood when the first discussion was, that it was going to replace the original line. With the information that I saw, it was going up Manor Street. I presumed that the original line went up Manor Street. but upon some looking, it doesn't. It goes up along Stricker Run and out through, Oswego Drive and all that, out through that way. It goes up along that creek. So I said, there needs to be some further discussion on this because, and one of the statements that I made was, is there a possibility to draw water from that 42-inch line into the McGinnis project that would serve as fire hydrants and fire suppression? And that we could, that way Columbia Borough wouldn't have to dig up and put a line in for that development.
So you're saying then there's not sufficient water to do the McGinnis project that's going on?
I didn't say that. I said,
But that's what you're
no,
referring to.
that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to, there's a 42-inch line that's gone right by it. And you can get it at a discount price. Why not look at it? In other words, there should be some negotiation.
Well, from what I heard, I feel the council made the right decision because they had asked questions and haven't got a lot of answers.
Well, but here's the fact of it though, Frank. The PUC makes the decision on this. Columbia Borough was asked to submit a letter of support for a loan with Penvest. Okay? It wasn't to put the pipe in or not. PUC will make that final determination where it's going to go. Not Columbia Borough. But the letter of support for their loan with Penvest would be considerably cheaper if they can get that loan versus going to another institution for the financing of that project. That's all they were asking Columbia Borough to do. Would you support us going for a loan for that project?
I understood that part.
Okay, and the borough said, no, we're not gonna send a letter of support. They didn't say, no, we're not gonna take that line, because we have some say, but I don't think we have the final say as to where that line is gonna go.
Well, as my understanding from listening to all of council, there was other questions that was asked that they would not give no answers on. And I don't blame them one bit for not turning it down.
The thing is, a couple of years out, and I don't think they have all the answers either. I had a call from the mayor, Lancaster, and some of the questions I asked her, they didn't have all the information. This thing is a couple of years out. First thing they have to do is secure financing. Second thing is to get permitting to do the project. Because if they're going to go into the river with an intake, they're going to need Army Corps of Engineers, EPA, DEP, and everybody else to get permitting. So they're a couple years away.
So by what your main reason was to put a T in there and make sure that the McGinnis project had plenty of water. So I'm going
Could be possible.
to ask you again, are you saying that they ain't going to have enough supply at this
No.
point without that 42-inch pipeline?
I don't think anybody has determined that.
Well, then you're moving ahead. You're getting ahead of the,
I'm looking at, can we get water there cheaper than water that someone could drink and could be used elsewhere? This is raw water out of the river. Why have treated water coming out of fire hydrants when it can be used in homes?
yes, and what kind of problems would this make, putting this 42-inch line in alongside the other one?
I don't think it's-
Are we, what are we looking at there?
I don't know what the current line is, Frank. I don't know if it's a 24 or what.
Well, regardless of what that is, you're putting a much bigger line alongside that, which is going to take up a lot of the space. How deep to go with it, I don't, use people probably know a lot of these details. I don't have them details, depending how deep they put it.
Well, that's the thing. It hasn't even been engineered.
But from what I heard at the meeting, the debate that you had, and I didn't say a word, and I just listened, and I just had to think about this. And I still feel you made the right decision. Thank you for listening.
Right, is there anyone else that wanted to speak that didn't get a chance to sign up? Mayor Lutz.
Sure. Yesterday, I was at a funeral for a former council person, Tom Lawson. I don't know if you all knew that Tom was on council. No, it was yesterday. So, but anyhow, I wanted to mention it because of Tom being on a former borough councilman, but also Tom was involved, both with his church and with the borough, in so many organizations and so many things. He did a lot of work for this community. I remember the first time I met Tom, ironically, he was a counselor at the playground. And then I have to work with him, but also a good man there. And sorry to see Tom go. The other thing, I had a person approached me the other day talking to me about e-bikes, electric bikes. And their comment was, they said they're seeing a lot of electric bikes on the streets and a lot of people riding electric bikes aren't following the rules of the road. And that's true. And do we do anything about it? Yes, I put in yes. We have warned people, we have cited people. Well, we do have the ability to confiscate bikes. And along with the confiscation, we have the ability to sell them. But his comment back to me was, that's good. People should know about that. And if you sell them bikes, why don't you put that money towards the bike unit or to the drone unit or something like that? And I said, well, if we ever get to that point, I'm sure it'll be put to good use. He went on further to say, and I was hoping that Evan would be here, and I'll have to ask Evan, could these bikes be registered for riding on the streets in Columbia? That I don't know. And I told him I would get with our attorney and ferret that out. But I don't know how it'd go, but it would be a local thing. So we'll take a look at that. And, you know, Todd, you were talking about regular generators and all.
I thought they do have to be
Not registered.
on the street.
No.
No, I mean, I thought that's where they needed to ride was in the street.
They must ride on the street, but can we, in a sense, license them for riding on Columbia streets? Registration would be just another thing for license. So we'll check that out. And I just wanted to mention it. And Chief's off vacation, so that's all I have.
Thank you. All right, workshop items. The first item we have is discussion with Rick Fisher on the dungeon floor restoration.
Evening, Council. Some of you know I've been doing some work on the dungeons down there. I'm trying to restore them back to what they, should look like from 1836. And you can go to the next slide, please. We know there was a wooden floor in there. There was a wooden bunk, a bench, and 2 buckets. One bucket was for toilet use, one was for cleansing. While I was cleaning the dungeons, I came across these 2 pieces of 2x4s, and I almost threw them out because I didn't know what they went to or anything. And then I noticed the one, you can see it's charred on the end. And then I went back through my files and I found out that there's 3 newspaper accounts of people setting themselves on fire down in the dungeons. So I believe that that's one of the pieces to the floor, the original floor. We didn't know what the floor looked like. There's no pictures of it or anything like that. But if you go to the next slide, please. Up a little more if you can. There we go. As you can see, this photo is from 1967 from Lancaster newspaper. This is when the workers were tearing the floors out of all the dungeons. And you notice there was no electric down there at that time. They strung a 1 light bulb down there to clean the cells out. But if you notice on the floor, the pile of wood, that's the original floor. So that's how I matched that up with the 2 pieces that I found. Next slide, please. I thought more or less they'd be like wooden planks like this, but that's not the case. If I didn't have them 2 pieces of wood, I'd probably be telling you they were wooden planks. But the idea is to restore the floors and using 2x4s, again, keep it as original as possible. using pressure treated wood. If it's not stained, we're gonna, throw some kind of stain on it or something like that. It does get a little damp down there, in the basement, the humidity and stuff. So once we restore it, we don't want to have to go back in 2 years and, restore it again. Next slide, please. And I had a display case, so I put the 2 pieces of wood in there so people can see it. The first dungeon cell you come to, it has the pipes in it and stuff for, plumbing upstairs. But I want to make this like a little artifact room, what artifacts I can find to put in there. You can see there's the bunk there from 1947 that used to hang above the market on the first floor when they had two cells up there. So that's original. The door, I believe, is original. It doesn't go to anything down there, but I'm pretty sure I know where it fit in at. And then the shutter you see on the left. If you go to the next slide, there's the shutter. I'm going to replace the hinges on this. Next slide, please. And that's where it went to. The very first cell has no bars in the window. This is the cell that was believed the constable would toss the people down. The others have bars in the window, so it has to be this one. And that shutter was found in another jail cell. And I couldn't match it up with anything until I went to the first cell, took measurements, went back to the shutter and measured that, and it fits perfectly there. The hinges line up with this here. So the hinges are going to need replaced on that too, on the right-hand side, as you can see. So that'll be original and kept shut, open up or for lectures or whatever. Next slide, please. All the painting in the dungeons have been done. We're not painting the cell walls. They're going to stay original. They scrub, give it a good scrub down or something like that. But 2 gentlemen come in past few weeks and they painted this support bars up there, suspension bars, the locks on the doors there, and the bars in the windows. So all the painting's done. Next slide. And here's the goal. The lantern you see in the middle of the photo, that's from about that time period of reproductions. We need 14 of them. We do have all 14. It costs $80 a piece, so we're going to have them installed soon. I like that on the right is a bench. Can't say that's the kind of bench that was used down there, but older pictures I've researched show that type of bench. So we want to have some of those made to put in the cell. And then on the left-hand side, a cot. We're going to have a cot, no mattresses, just a cot because that's what they slept on. I do know that straw was put on them, and they were given a blanket. So, next slide. And what I want to do is that first room, the artifact room. I don't know if they used leg irons. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But I want to get a vintage pair to put on display down there. A vintage pair of handcuffs in the middle of the photograph. And I'd like to get mannequins. Now the photo on the right of the mannequin there, that was taken in 1990. So I want to replace, get a mannequin, maybe put it in the bed so people can walk by. Maybe a guy holding on to the bars in the windows. There is a women's cell down there. Maybe get another mannequin like that dressed up, put in there. So that's a long-term goal. That's the idea. It's basically going to be a museum. Tours, next slide. We're going to have interpretive panels going down the hallway where you can read like famous people, deaths in the dungeons, escapes from the dungeons. So you can be able to walk down the hallway and read all this stuff without somebody telling you, the stories. Right now, I give tours every Saturday. They're self-guided if you'd like. If you'd like to know the stories, then I take you down and tell you the whole history of it. Everything I tell is based on newspaper accounts, since there are no records. From the 1947 fire that wiped out everything. So everything I tell is based on newspaper accounts. Next slide. And this is the goal, to turn it into this. Again, we know they had a bunk in there, a wooden floor, a bench, and 2 buckets. But that's more or less what it's going to look like when we're finished. So I welcome suggestions, opinions, or yeah, I know Eric had mentioned maybe putting cobblestone down on the floors. That would look nice. That's more like, jail cells or castle dungeon prisons. But again, I know they had a wooden floor, and I want to keep it as original as possible. So, any questions?
The range we had used. Was there any?
No, I checked on that. There's the the sewer line down there, going down the steps, but there was nothing down there.
My comment would be putting the wood floor down. Building under that floor.
Yeah. Well, I showed you some pipes. I believe I showed you some pipes in the women's cell. Don't know what they were for. Talked to archaeologists, they don't know. I've talked to, to construction people, they don't know. But they're concreted in. They sit above the floor about that much. They're cast iron. But two of them are cemented in. The other two have like little handles on that could probably be turned. But I believe that was a sewer line of some sort. I've checked with, done research, and I asked why these pipes were put in there. And it said, like in the 1850s on up, jail cells around the country put those in to dump the human waste. So that's what I believe. I can't say that 100%, but that's what I believe. That's what they were used for.
What if you were to die test?
I was going to ask that same question about water, because why were the original floors, do you know why the floors were pulled up?
They were rotted. They were rotted that bad. Even the newspaper account says they were pretty well rotted. That's why they were tore up.
Yeah.
They started out original floors, dirt floors. And I can't find anything when the floors were actually put in. Only that the floors were tore up in 1967 because they were rotted. Yeah, I can't
Moisture,
tell you what type of
humidity
wood or
over
anything
time.
like that. But that's the goal. That's what I'm trying to turn it into, a museum,
Yeah.
a self-guided tour where people can, look at it, enjoy it, whatever. So,
A lot of good research.
With the amount of people that I've seen go through there and the comments they have made, if you make this that way, it's going to just enhance it over.
oh, well, yeah. Every week I take an average, maybe 10 to 15 people each Saturday down there. And I accept donations. There's no charge to get down there. If you want to give a donation, you can. And that'll be used to help buy the floor and other things we need down there. Through the Historical Society, through lectures I've given, we already raised like $2,300. That's in a separate account from the Historical Society. The $2,300 goes towards the dungeon. If you haven't seen him, come on over on a Saturday morning and I'll take you down.
A lot of good research, and looks like you really did your homework.
Yeah, I keep finding more stuff. I wanted to make wanted posters down there of famous Lancaster County, outlaws, whatever. And the only thing I could come across is the Buzzard Brothers. I don't know if you ever heard of the Buzzard Brothers from New Holland. There were 6 brothers, plus they had like 20 other guys that rode with them. They'd steal you blind. Abe Buzzard was the leader of the gang. He died in prison, Eastern State Penitentiary at 85, but 50 years of his life was spent in jail. And when they'd let him out, he turned preacher. He would preach at a church. Now, the reason he'd preach at a church was while he was preaching at the church, his outlaw buddies were robbing the people who were attending church. But two of those outlaws, and one was the Buzzard, 2 of them were in the dungeons. I just found that out like last week. I was doing research and found out that Joe Buzzard spent a night down there. Somebody accused him of stealing his stuff, which he was a thief. They put him down in prison for the night. 2 of his friends come out the next day and say, he couldn't have done that. He was with me. So they let him out. And then there was a man called Lippincott. He was with Abe Buzzard. Abe Buzzard, the leader of the gang, was actually in Columbia. Supposedly he wore a red wig to throw people off so they wouldn't recognize him. So he got away, but they arrested Lippincott. And he actually threatened to shoot one of the constables. So I'm going to make up wanted posters with their names, just to put down there, because they're famous outlaws from Lancaster County. But they're the only ones I can find.
Can you do an AI generation and put Thomas Edison, because he spent the night down there?
Yeah. And John L. Sullivan, the great
Yeah.
American boxer. If you don't know this story, he came to Columbia for a fight, and he was a drunk. He was an alcoholic. When he got done with this fight, he pushed people around. It was really rude to people. He got arrested that night for public drunkenness. He spent a night in the dungeons. When they let him out the next day, he swore if he ever comes back to Columbia, he isn't touching a drop of alcohol. He came back a year later, was clean shaven, very polite to the people, shaking their hands. and you joined a temperance group and advocated about drinking alcohol. One night in those dungeons scared the living crap out of him. It changed his life for the better. So you don't want to be down there. Nobody stayed more than 3 days down there. It was just basically a temporary holding cell till the wagon from Lancaster came out and took him to Lancaster County Prison. But imagine being down there for 3 days. There's 2 men that were down there for a couple of days. The constable forgot about them. They asked if they could spend the night. All the hotels were full. They weren't criminals there. So the constable let them down there. They got a night's sleep. We'll let you out in the morning. He forgot about them. They were screaming. They had no water, no food, no nothing. They were screaming out the grates. Somebody grabbed the constable. They let him out. Some hotel that was down on Front Street. The guy felt so bad, he gave him a night's lodging and a free meal because he felt so bad what happened to him. So he thought Columbia people were better than that, so he wanted to make it up to them. So there's a lot of stories. Believe it or not, there's a lot of stories about these dungeons people don't know. And I keep researching and finding more and more and more. So that's all I have. If anybody has
on the Thomas Edison thing, I read a book about Thomas Edison, and I have reason to believe it was actually his son from that book, because it actually said he never learned how to drive, but his son was known to be more of the party animal and was getting in trouble. So, and he was also named Thomas Edison.
Oh.
That's news to me.
So before we defame the actual Thomas Edison.
Yeah, but what I
that.
tell people, he didn't spend a night down there. He spent a few hours down there. And I tell people, we think that's why he invented the light bulb, because it's dark down there. He had to come up with an idea. Hey, I got to do something about this. That's just a joke I give down there. Anything else? He probably did. I think he was dead before the market house was built. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rick.
All right. Next, Councilperson Stoll, this is your item, the discussion with the commercial realtor for considerations for this property.
Thank you. Yeah. So one of the things that we've been looking into is the future sale of the McGinnis property, and I had the privilege to meet with Kevin Wolf here in the front row, so you can come up. But one of the things I invited Kevin to come out and just share kind of from his expertise, information, options that we may have in the marketing of the property, understanding what we have and the best path forward. I think the more information that we can take in as a council, the better decision we can make for the benefit of the borough and the best use of that and development of that property. So, since the direction of the drone research facility fell through, we really haven't had a ton of discussion here at this table in terms of what we want to see it be developed as. So I see this as a prime opportunity for discussion, questions, and take it away, Kevin. Thanks for coming out.
No, of course. Thank you guys all for having me, of course. So a little bit about myself. I'm a commercial real estate broker with NEI Keystone, Lancaster County native. So our office is in Berks County up in Wyomissing, but my area of focus is Lancaster, York, Lebanon, Berks County, sometimes Chester County as well, or the outskirts of Philadelphia. Experience in the industrial sector, from leasing, sales, ground up development. I've worked on several ground up development projects over the last 5 years. The office sector, from leasing and sales, and retail ground up development, leasing, investment sales. So pretty spread across all the sectors of the industry. Was brought to Columbia a few years ago, actually, to, I spoke with Mark Strivers, I believe it was, about the site. And at the time, the industrial market was booming. Everyone was looking for ground up sites to tie up, develop a warehousing on, and take advantage of the, post-COVID industrial boom that we were seeing in Pennsylvania from a lot of the e-commerce and distribution companies that were, growing and expanding their online presence and just their distribution networks. Recently was brought back, the site was brought back to my attention, based on some of my activity in Columbia. I've actually recently just leased out Craig Friedman's property up at on North Second Street and on his office building on Linden Street, and have been in and around the area talking to some other property owners to try to figure out what the best pathway forward is for their properties. And recently was able to speak with Peter and talk about potential for data center development on site, or any other pathway that we can find that could obviously contribute to the tax basis of the borough and allow for just maybe job creation, just general positive movement from the borough's economic standpoint. Recently, so I've been the last few, I'd say 2 years, the new gold rush in commercial real estate in the industrial sector is data centers. People are actively, and as you guys are all very aware, Lancaster County is going through some approval processes and some development of some very large centers, one being down near Peach Bottom, other out in Greenfield, and then the other on Harrisburg Pike. So obviously, Lancaster is not this unknown county anymore from what I kind of thought it was when I was growing up. It's now all of a sudden become, top of mind for all of the large institutional developers in, the data center world, the industrial world, et cetera. So we have had some experience in the data center sector, looking at sites, diagnosing power, utilities, figuring out the water access to the site, as that was, at the first, the first go of things, how everyone was cooling the plants was basically putting them on a river, as close to a power plant as you possibly can, i.e., as you've seen up in Borough, Pennsylvania, where they're getting direct, lines in from power stations with cooling access just along rivers or major water sources. Now, alternative methods are being used to cool data centers, and the water, requirement isn't as heavy as it once was, just based on the strategic development of some of these sites. But at the same point, we looked at the site here with 3 groups. One that I have, been working with from, for a couple years now, who are very active in the data center development world and the industrial development world. They're based out of Philadelphia. Another group was, they're a smaller development group based out of Philadelphia who are currently working on projects in Delaware and upstate New York and in Northeast Pennsylvania. And then another group was a more local development group that I would say is more of a entitlement group that then sell off to a larger institutional development once full entitlements are achieved. So the first group was very excited about the site. They actually are in the process of working on another project in Lancaster County up in Ephrata, which would be a 38-acre site off of West Trout Run Road in Ephrata. They, sent me an LOI right away. I said, well, I still need to, introduce myself to the council, try to, see if we can, if it makes sense to list things or what the process would be from the bidding process and everything else. But they were very excited, ready to move on the site. And then unfortunately they sent me the power diagnosis that their in-house consultant sent over, which basically stated that all of the substations surrounding Columbia are maxed out from a power standpoint, and the achievement for smaller data centers like we'd be able to fit on the McGinnick site would be around 50 megawatts, and that won't be achievable based on the available power through the power stations that are local in West Hempfield and East Hempfield, and with the, I just have to look at the number here, the 960 megawatts that Amazon's taking down at Beach Bottom as well for their so that's obviously a substantial amount of power. But so the data center avenue, in my opinion, is, an expensive one. Well, not really my opinion, it is an expensive one to go down to achieve a power diagnosis from PPL or the, a power supplier in the area to understand what the, power capacity of a site is. It usually costs a couple $100,000. I think we were quoted at one point $185,000 to do just the power diagnosis from PPL. And then that diagnosis then just gives you the information about the power to the site, which we were able to achieve through this consultant. And then, on top of that, you then are months afterwards until you'll get an answer as to how much power you can get and when you'll get it, so to speak. So it gets to be a very long, drawn out, expensive process to go down this route. And for the size of the site and the amount of power that's available, I just frankly don't think it's worth the borough's time and effort to spend the money to do the power study and go down that route. Now, obviously, this consultant could be wrong. He could be missing something. There's mistakes that can be made, of course, but that's just the reality of the situation, just in terms of costs, timelines, and everything else if you were to go to data center route, for the site. Obviously, with the zoning being light business, the capacity to do any industrial site or warehousing distribution, from an access standpoint as well, and from a zoning perspective, would be very hard to achieve on the site. So basically what we're saying, I think, is we have to get, even more creative here to figure out what the biggest and best use is for the site. Obviously, with it being where it is located, a recreational use could be an option. I've spoke to several of the larger soccer clubs and baseball clubs in the area as well, who are always seeking land and through the site of, through Columbia out to them, and they would maybe be of interest. How the borough increases their tax revenue and everything else based on that sort of use, they typically can pay the least amount of money that any other use can pay, in that sector. But at the same point, it does add some positive elements to the community. I grew up in Manhattan Township, and it was, somewhat nice to have athletic fields and athletic facilities available just to the public on Lever Road or at Overland Park or anything along those lines. So I wouldn't dismiss that as an option. It would just be about, economically, is the borough selling themselves short, by going that route, or, is it, to the benefit of the community, and it's okay, and you're okay taking, maybe the hit on what the, expected tax outcomes could be. Obviously, an office park, could work there and is allowed during in zoning. That would take some significant marketing to get the site out and make it available. Some engineering and site planning would be, likely required just to get a footprint out, what would be available, get in front of tenants. Obviously, not very many office buildings have been built in the last couple of years since COVID, but that sector is, coming back, and I think we've seen from an existing office building standpoint, vacancy rates being very, somewhat low. The Lancaster area, Wyomissing, the office space sector is, as long as the offices are, at least don't require a lot of fit out, as construction costs sometimes keep some of these spaces from being leased out, just because of the economics of the situation. And you can, office park, of some sort, whether it's a medical one, just professional office campus. Obviously, then you also have the retail sector we can explore. There are retailers very interested in the Columbia area. I've had a couple offers come in on the Freedman site, that were in the $2 to $3 million range, as I believe there's, some big box grocery stores, retailers that are interested in expanding into Columbia. However, is the McGinnis site of a retail site, and from an access standpoint, from a vehicles per day standpoint, obviously that's somewhat low, but at the same point, if it's there and can be had for a reasonable number, I think there's likely some uses that you could get excited about the property, and especially if you're somewhat of a destination retailer rather than somebody who thinks on visibility and vehicles per day. So there's a couple of different avenues that I believe could be successful for the site. I think the office, the retail, and even the recreational avenue, whether it be a park, an athletic facility, a golf course, whatever it might be, all are going to require some significant marketing. They're all very achievable based on what the borough property at. I think especially if there's a way to acquire the property for somewhat cheaper than what they can acquire land in Lancaster County, I think obviously has a very good chance of being successful. I think a lot of the land prices in the county itself at the moment make things very difficult for developers to pencil and make economics make sense for sites.